Now we're going to examine the determinants of elasticity. In particular, when are supply curves more or less elastic? A more elastic supply curve is a flatter one. A small change in price, a low rise in the price, will lead to a large change in the quantity supplied. The supply curve will be flat if it's more elastic. Supply will be more elastic when it is easy to change the level and use of inputs. For example, if I see that corn prices are rising, it's easy for me to switch from planting soybeans to planting corn. Oil prices have been falling recently, and it takes time to bring oil wells on and offline. So despite the fall in oil prices, oil production has not slowed very much in lots of places where people are drilling for oil. So the supply of oil hasn't fallen very much, even though the price has fallen substantially. Supply is also more elastic when firms have a longer time period to adjust. We consider that converting factories or retraining workers is a very time-consuming process. The oil extraction industry is an example of this. When firms have a longer time period to adjust, they will adjust their levels of production. So the short-term supply curve, the short-run supply curve, will be much more inelastic than a long-run supply curve. The short-run supply curve will be steeper. Elasticity of demand. Demand is more elastic when there are many close substitutes for the goods. So demand for Pepsi is fairly elastic because Coke is a very close substitute. Demand will be elastic when there are lots of things that you can switch to, but it will be more inelastic if there are a few other alternatives. Demand will also tend to be more elastic when the item is expensive. People are much more price sensitive to expensive things. And when the item is a luxury rather than a necessity. If the item is something that we can do without, then when the price rises, we do without. And then again, just like with supply, demand is more elastic over the long term. We can change our behaviors more easily over the long term. For instance, if we think about gas consumption, if the price of gas rises tomorrow, we will likely drive to work just like we did before. But if gas prices rise tomorrow and stay high over the long run, we may be able to substitute to alternative forms of transportation or more fuel-efficient vehicles, perhaps. So over the long run, demand, just like supply, is more elastic over the long haul. Some important definitions. First one is unit elasticity. When the elasticity of something is equal to 1 exactly, we call that unit elastic. That means a 10% increase in quantity demanded, for instance, brings about a 10% decrease in the price. And if the relationship between the percentage change in quantity and the percentage change in price is exactly 1, we call this unit elastic. If the elasticity is greater than 1, we say that the demand, for instance, is elastic. And if the elasticity is less than 1, we say that the demand is inelastic. The same goes for supply. We can have elastic or inelastic supply. But the cutoff point is when the elasticity is equal to 1.0, where a 10% change in quantity is associated with a 10% change in price. A perfectly elastic supply curve is horizontal. In this case, the elasticity of it is infinity, or a demand curve as well. If the supply or demand curve is perfectly horizontal, we say that this is infinitely elastic. And what we mean by this is that an infinitesimal decrease in price will bring a infinitesimal decrease in quantity supplied or increase in quantity demanded. A perfectly inelastic demand curve or supply curve is vertical. In this case, demand or supply is not at all responsive to changes in price. So if we have a vertical supply or demand curve, the elasticity associated with that one is exactly 0.